I don't usually read off of a prepared script. However, the subject is very important and I have to be precise. I've been writing for Israel 365 News for 11 years and have written over 5,000 articles. My main focus is to present the prophetic process of redemption taking place in Israel, what Jews call Geula. Frequently write about projects relating to the preparations for the Third Temple. As a Torah observant Jew, this is intensely important to me and I take my job very seriously. I strive to be accurate, to tell the truth in every respect, and to be kind. This is especially true when I'm writing about subjects pertaining to the Third Temple. More than a decade ago, the Temple Institute began its Red Heifer project with the intention of reinstituting the biblical ritual that created the ashes that were used to purify Jews in order to perform the temple service in completeness. This mitzvah is the most enigmatic, confusing, and complicated mitzvah, and throughout history, red heifers have been exceedingly rare. Rabbi Azariah Ariel, a noted Torah scholar, was tasked with heading the project. After countless potential candidates were investigated and disqualified, they joined up with Boneh Israel in 2021. It's a joint effort of Jews and Christians, and they set out to find a red heifer in Texas. Remarkably, they were successful. And in 2022, 5 red Angus heifers, all under the age of 1 year, were flown to Israel. I want to emphasize that I have always maintained that the Temple Institute is the only and the final authority regarding anything about the temple. I was deeply disturbed to see false information being presented online about the red heifers as soon as they arrived in Israel. And I worked to counter the misinformation through videos and even wrote a book on the subject. Again, I emphasize that all of the information I conveyed in my book and articles until July of this year were, to the best of my knowledge, accurate and complete. I was surprised in the first week of July to see an article in Israel National News with a grainy video showing a cow being burned on a pyre of wood, with a story claiming that one of the red heifers being stored in Shiloh had been deemed unsuited for the ceremony and was burned as a dry run, a practice for an eventual red heifer ritual. I contacted the Temple Institute to verify this and was told that they had overseen the burning and requested that it not be photographed or videoed. They had asked that Israel National News remove the article, but that request was denied. I chose to honor their wishes and not to publish an article about the burning. But 1 week later, the news had spread. Of course, none of the accounts were firsthand or based in Jewish law. They were inaccurate and spreading misinformation. I requested again, and I was told precisely what to print. I was given specific details about that practice burning. I was informed by the Temple Institute that the heifer that was used in that practice burning had been deemed unsuited, and the burning did not produce ashes that could be used to purify the Jews. The burning was carried out in Samaria, and to the best of my knowledge, the actual red heifer, in order to be suited to produce ashes that are suited for purifying Jews, has to be burned on the Mount of Olives in a very specific site. In the beginning of August, the Temple Institute posted an announcement on their Facebook feed stating that all of the red heifers had been deemed unsuited, all 5 or the remaining 4. I published an article directly quoting and linking to their announcement. The Institute contacted me and told me to print a retraction. 3 of the red heifers, they told me, were still potentially kosher for the ceremony. I did so. I printed a retraction, even though the Institute's original post is still on their Facebook feed, claiming that all of the cows have been disqualified. I was asked by many people to comment on the practice burning, even though I wasn't there. And I have gone on record making statements that I now know were inaccurate or unfounded. They were statements in which I was quoting precisely the information that I had gotten directly from the Temple Institute. To be candid, there are many contradictory claims, and I can no longer present myself as an accurate source, even though I will never quote anyone except for the Temple Institute. Even so, I can no longer trust the information given to me by the Temple Institute. I would like to say in my defense that I was given false information. These are some of the points that I discovered were inaccurate. The young Cohen appointed by the Temple Institute, whose identity I still do not know, he was trained to carry out the ritual. He told several people at the event that the red heifer was kosher and that the ritual was not a dry run, but was in fact intended to produce effective and authentic ashes that could be used to purify Jews. And in the end, he verified that that was what the burning had produced, actual ashes that could be used to purify Jews. I was told by the Temple Institute that the cow had been bitten by a dog, rendering it unsuited. Several sources who were at the burning denied this. I was told that the cow had been slaughtered in one location and burned in another, which would not produce the desired kosher results. Several eyewitnesses claimed this was not the case, though I still cannot verify or unverify it. It was clear that the July ritual was not carried out on the Mount of Olives, as is stated in the Talmud that it must be. The ritual was carried out in Samaria, but the young Cohen told some witnesses that this was acceptable. Perhaps most shockingly, the ashes from the burning were collected by the non-priestly participants or observers, and the ashes were used to heal people. This was a grave error. If the ashes were indeed kosher, they would be sanctified for a specific temple use, purifying Jews. It's a grievous sin for a non-Kohen to handle the ashes, and using them for another purpose, an unintended purpose, might indeed constitute idolatry and be an even graver sin. I'm no longer going to comment on the red heifer. This will be my last video on the subject. I cannot rely on the information that I am getting. I apologize for misleading people who relied on me. I want to emphasize that the information I passed on about everything prior to July 11th, to July 1st rather, was, to the best of my knowledge, accurate. I also want to reiterate that the laws pertaining to the red heifer are incredibly complicated, and while many people claim to understand, unless they have an extensive background in Talmud and Halacha, they are lying. It pains me to say this, but I am deeply disappointed in the Temple Institute. I feel they did not provide accurate information to the public, and they allowed misinformation to proliferate to a degree that damaged the efforts to bring the third temple, and it also damaged their credibility, which will affect their future efforts to bring the third temple. It is my humble opinion that if the Temple Institute is the final authority on the red heifer, there are a few questions they must answer to the public. Number one, was the event in Samaria on July 1st an actual ceremony that resulted in ashes that can be used to purify Israel? Number two, are there any suitable or possibly suitable heifers remaining of the 5 that came from Texas? Number three, if they are possibly suitable, why has the Temple Institute not yet performed the ceremony? The longer they wait, the greater the chance that the cows will become unsuited. They will grow non-red hairs. If they're not suitable, then why have they not declared them to be so? Number 4, who is in charge of the red heifers and who officiated at the July 1st event? 5, did the Kohen certify the cow and the event? Is his certification valid? Can we have a statement from him directly? Number 6, is a ceremony that is carried out in Samaria and not on the Mount of Olives valid? The final question, who owns the cows and who has the authority? So I apologize if I misled anyone. This will be my final video on the subject.